Hello everyone, welcome to Research Methodology. My name is Tin. This is Unit 2 of the course Quantitative Research Approach. The section today that I'm going to talk about is research question. In this section, I'm not going to talk about the general ideas of research questions as we have already discussed that in the previous class meeting. What I'm going to do now is just introduce to you some types of research questions for quantitative research approach, and then I'm going to analyze the examples of the research questions that you have already provided. There are several types of research questions. In this section, I'm going to talk to you about the 10 popular types of research questions that we often see in quantitative research. The first one is called causation. This kind of research question is to understand the cause or the effect of a phenomenon. The second type of research question is called comparison. This type of question is to understand the similarities or differences between the two groups of samples or more than two. The third type of research question is called correlation. This kind of research question is to understand the relationship between two or more than two variables. The fourth type is called description. This type of research question is to help the researchers to describe a situation or a phenomenon under investigation. This type of research question is applicable for both qualitative research approach and quantitative research approach. The difference between these two is about how to describe the phenomenon. Qualitative research approach uses text or images to describe the phenomenon. Meanwhile, quantitative research approach uses numerical data to describe the situation or phenomenon. The fifth type is evaluation. This one is quite popular in education and training. For example, after a year of study, the school would like to know if the students perform well or not very well in a course. The next 5 types of research questions are explanation, exploring, factor, prediction, and structure. The structure type is the kind of question that can help researchers understand the structure of a construct. For example, when we look at the literature on learning motivation, it is suggested that motivation has two components, namely intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation. If we think that it is not suitable in a particular situation from our own observation, we may ask the question so that we can reinvestigate the structure of motivation. Maybe our finding is going to be able to suggest that motivation includes 4 or 5 components instead of only 2 components like what has been suggested in the literature. Alright, now let's have a look at some examples that you have already written. The first one, to what extent does motivation in learning English come from students' interest? In this research question, we can see that there are 2 main variables. The first one is motivation, and the second one is interest. Motivation in learning English is a very popular concept, and I believe that you have already understood that. The second one is interest. I don't know what you mean by interest. Do you mean hobby? I'm not quite sure about that. Actually, if you look at the literature on interest, you can see that it is a very complicated concept. The literature suggests that interest includes two types. The first one is called situational interest, and the second one is called personal interest. Personal interest is the kind of interest that people have no matter where they are. For example, if you have a personal interest in football, no matter who you meet, you will talk to him or her about football. No matter where you are, you still want to watch football. The other type is situational interest. Situational interest is the kind of interest that people have when they are in a certain situation. For example, when you are at home, you want to read books, but when you are in school, you want to talk to your friends. So you can see that the understanding of the concept is very important. And if you can argue that there should be a relationship or a correlation between motivation and interest, and then this one is going to be a possible research question. The second example, to what extent do freshmen and senior students of FFL different in terms of communication anxiety? I'm not talking about grammar because I think that you have to do it by yourself. The main variable that we can see here is communication anxiety. It is a popular construct, and I hope that you could understand what it is. The second variable is called freshmen and senior students. However, there are too many differences between the freshmen and senior students, and it's not clear about what you want to understand exactly. I take two examples. The main difference between the freshmen and senior students may be about age, because the fourth year students are likely to be older than the first year students. If it's about age, and then you talk about age level. If it's not about age, or the second one maybe is about English language proficiency, because the fourth year student may have a higher level of English language proficiency than the first year student. If it is about English language proficiency, and then you have to say the English language proficiency. To be very simple, okay, you have to mean exactly what you want to investigate. It's not very clear about the differences between the freshman and the senior that you want to convey in this research question. The third research question. What are the similarities and differences in the motivation for studying English among non-major students of different year levels? Okay, I'm not talking about the wording, it's so clumsy. But we can see here that the main problem with this one is about non-major students. Non-major students, who are they? What are the kinds of students who have no major? Maybe you want to say the non-English major students, but even with the non-English major students, so what majors they are? You have to say what it is, not what it is not. For example, you say that this research is to understand the motivation of Vietnamese students learning English. That's good. But if you say that This research is to understand the non-Vietnamese students learning English. Non-Vietnamese students learning English. So who are they? Are they Chinese? Are they French? Are they Thai or what? You have to say what it is, not saying what it is not in your research question. And then you talk about the similarities and differences. Well, I'm not quite sure about what you want to mean here. Similarities and differences. Are you talking about motivation or motives? When you talk about motivation, and then it is about the levels. And if it's about level, we don't say similarities and differences. We talk about the levels, right? So if you talk about motives, so maybe you talk about similarities and differences. Motives are the reasons for doing something. Okay, so maybe if it is about motives, and then you can talk about the similarities and differences of the motives for learning English. Example number 4. To what extent does gender affect FFL students' autonomy? I'm not quite sure what you mean by autonomy, because autonomy normally is used for an entity. For example, the university autonomy. That means that a university has the full control of its own operation. You may mean learner autonomy. If you want to talk about learner autonomy in this situation, and then say learner autonomy, not autonomy. The main problem with this research question is about gender and learner autonomy. If you want to investigate that relationship, and it is not necessary, because empirical research has already shown that autonomy is not affected by gender in any way. All right, that's all. Thank you very much for your attention, and you can have a look at your research questions and then improve them. Thank you.